A short introduction to Lindsay Clanfield. I expect you've all read the biographical notes in the programme. I have to admit that when we first decided we were thinking about inviting Lindsay, I did what probably most people would do these days. I did a little internet search. And I found a lot of very, many pages. And one of the things which did stick out was the fact that he'd been to Buckingham Palace. He received an award from the Duke of Edinburgh for recognition for a book which he wrote together with, actually co-authored with Luke Prodromo, dealing with difficulties, published by Delta Publishing. And I found this out through an article that he himself had written in the EL Gazette. And if you don't mind, I will say a few things that he himself wrote in the article, that one of the reasons why he decided to go to Buckingham Palace was he felt he had to visit a particular room in Buckingham Palace which had been made famous by the Beatles. Now, is there anyone in the audience who knows what I'm talking about? Because if there is, I've seen one hand, two hands go up. Okay, we're all showing our age. Okay, back in, was it the late 60s? The Beatles received one of those awards. Was it the MBE, the Member of the British Empire? The MBE, I think it was. Okay. And the story goes, this is what the Beatles themselves said, that even the Beatles were feeling a bit nervous. And so they went into one of the bathrooms at Buckingham Palace to smoke a joint. So Lindsay mentioned this as a reason for deciding, yes, I will go to Buckingham Palace. Okay, on a more serious note, Lindsay is an extremely well-known author, with Macmillan, as well as with publishing, Delta Publishing. His present course book, Global, has also won one of these awards. So he's actually been back to Buckingham Palace to collect this award. He's addressed teachers and given workshops in more than 20 countries, and we're very honoured to have him here in Greece. Lindsay, over to you.
Okay, let me just get this. Hello, everybody. First of all, I would, you can all hear me okay, yes? Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank TESOL Macedonia-Thrace for inviting me to this conference. It's an honor to be here. It's my first, actually no, it's my second time in Thessaloniki. My first time I came here, I'm from Canada, and there's a large Greek community in Toronto. In fact, near where my parents live, there's a whole part of Toronto which is called Greektown. And there were lots of trips organized for students to Greece, for Greek Canadian students to come back. And I came on one of these trips with some friends of mine. I think it was now 22 years ago. So I haven't been back since. But I'm very happy, therefore, to come back. I'd also like to thank Macmillan for sponsoring me. Macmillan are my publishers of a book that I've just completed, a course book called Global. And so my thanks to them for making it possible for me to come to this and other conferences. I'd like to start, though, with a sentence. This is a workshop that I've made especially for this conference, and I'd like to start it with the following sentence. My name is Lindsay Clanfield, and I used to be an enthusiastic teacher. It sounds a bit like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but it's true. When I started teaching, I had very big ideas, very noble ideas about what I would do with my students. I had a very noble perception of myself as a teacher, especially an English teacher. Now, I taught in Canada at the beginning, and my first job was teaching new Canadians, immigrants. I had language classes with a group of adults. And I want to share one of the stories that kind of helped light my fire. One of these things that happen in English class that don't happen in other kinds of classes. I was teaching a group. There were some Argentinians, there were some Koreans, and there was a very old Chinese man. And I learned that in English class you can do these kind of funny games. The game that we were playing was, and I had learned it from my teacher trainer, is that everyone had to write the name of an animal and stick it on their head. Have you ever done these kinds of games where you have to guess who you are? Sometimes you can stick it on your back. Anyway, so I was really thrilled. I was, brand new out of teaching college. I was going to do this with all these adults, people sort of 20 years older than me. I made them put the Post-it notes of animals on their head. They didn't know what animal they were, so they had to ask questions. Do I have legs? Do I have wings? Very useful English. And everybody was playing, and they'd all finished except for the very old Chinese man. And the poor man, he kept forgetting the questions he had asked, sort of 3 questions later. So he would ask the same question again. And I could tell the rest of the group were getting kind of annoyed. Now, the word that he had on his forehead was duck, a duck. And he kept asking the same questions again. Finally, one of the Korean men had enough. We've been going on, and as an inexperienced teacher, I thought, well, we have to continue until you guess the animal. So we were going and going, and finally one of the Korean men said, in a very frustrated English, he said, "You are very expensive, and people eat you in China." And the old man looked, and he smiled, and he said, "I am a dog." Well, this was the kind of experience that I thought great. I mean, you never get this kind of thing in a math class or a science class. I was really, we had a lot of fun and so on. My second job, due to economic problems at the time in Canada, I ended up leaving and taking a job in Mexico, where I taught at a public university in Chiapas, which is the poorest state in Mexico. So again, I had very noble ideas of what I would be doing there and teaching students. I used to prepare my lessons, my grammar lessons. At that point, we had different kinds of lessons. I would have either grammar lessons, which we called structure lessons. I don't know if you had a similar thing. And then I would have a reading lesson. Now it's all, of course, integrated. But at the time, there were kind of different lessons. And I found some of these when I was preparing this plenary, and I thought, my God, I feel like I wrote a thesis on some of these lesson plans. I had written, everything in painstaking detail, all written out by hand. I used to do enormous projects with the students. I started finding out about learner autonomy. We did all kinds of learner autonomy things. They produced poetry magazines, and I even started singing with students, singing songs and things. And again, I thought this is the only kind of class where I could do this kind of magical moments. So yes, I was an enthusiastic teacher. However, a few years later, my feelings about teaching, about students, and in fact about English began to change. So sort of 2 years in, working at this university, I started getting a bit tired of some of the students, especially some who didn't seem to be progressing at all. I started feeling a bit guilty about that at first, but then I started feeling a bit irritated and sort of just generally tired with the students who were not moving on. We were always at the same level. And in fact, in Chiapas, where I was in Mexico, I got a big shock when I came to Europe because our advanced level was the equivalent of below a first certificate level in the rest of Europe. So I felt that their English wasn't improving. I then had the misfortune that at the department, we went through a bit of a bad patch with the other professors and teachers there. There was a lot of territoriality, so people sort of, everyone had their space in the staff room and you couldn't sit at sit at a table because it belonged to this teacher, and this other teacher didn't get the position of director, so they were mad at everybody else, and all this kind of unfortunate bickering that went on. So that combined with me feeling tired of the students started making me feel a bit depressed about things. And I suppose at that moment, I started going through a stage where I began to wonder, what on earth am I doing here in Mexico teaching these people English? Do they really need English? Do they really need the English that I'm teaching them? I had moved beyond teaching, do I have wings? Do I have a tail? I was teaching sort of, functional language, language for going through airports, staying in hotels, ordering at restaurants. But a part of me was thinking, do my students really need all this English? Are they really going to travel? And if they are, what am I teaching them to be? And I started wondering, am I helping them to become just good global consumers? I'm helping you to shop more and to buy more things in English and go and travel like that and so on. I went through a bout of serious doubting that was I contributing to some kind of English imperialist plan. There's a book, I don't know if you're aware of, there's a book that if you're ever feeling that you want to really punish yourself and feel bad about being an English teacher, there's a book called Linguistic Imperialism by Robert Phillipson. You had him as a plenary speaker. It's a wonderful book, but by gosh, it will make you feel a bit anxious about what you're doing. So I started wondering, there was a combination of these things, not getting on with the colleagues or bad situation with colleagues, feeling tired of the students, and also beginning to question what I was doing. I think really I was burning out. So, burnout. I look back on this time now, and I've done some research on this, and in fact I did some research on this a few years ago while I was working on a book on teacher difficulties with one of your compatriots, Luc Prodromou. And here's what I found about burnout. Scholars have studied and defined what burnout is, and I've put some of these on the notes on your handout. They call it a condition caused by depersonalization, exhaustion, and a diminished sense of accomplishment. Burnout is a response to chronic, everyday stress rather than an occasional crisis. So burnout is when it is grinding you down. Okay? And when teachers are burnt out, not only does the quality of the teaching suffer, but also the quality of life. One tool that I found that is now being used internationally to measure burnout is something called the Maslach Burnout Inventory. It was designed by Christina Maslach, an American academic and expert on burnout. Have any of you heard this name or heard of the Maslach Burnout Inventory? No? That's good. It's been used to measure burnout in various social professions in the USA and across many other countries. On a Google search, I found that this tool has been used to measure burnout in secondary and primary school teachers in this country. I'd like you to take a moment now to take your handout and look at the back. On the back of the handout is a rather simplified version of the burnout inventory. Okay, this is what is given to teachers and other people in social professions to measure